Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hall Podcast. I'm your host today, Ryan King. We're doing the podcast a little different format today. We're with Vicky Waldron from CIRP, and we're just communicating via online. And you may hear some background noise. We got some high school students in the shop today running some equipment, so I apologize in advance for that. Vicky, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on. So tell us a little bit about CIRP.
So CIRP is a jointly funded union and employer program. We've been around since the mid-1980s, and we provide mental health and substance use services to all of our members and their family members as well. And so when I say we provide mental health and substance use services, that's a whole range, a whole spectrum of services, whatever an individual might need. So that's anything from individual counselling, it might be psychoeducational workshops, it might be group work, and of course it's residential treatment as well.
Okay. And how did you find yourself involved with CIRP?
So I've always worked in mental health and substance use. I've never actually worked in any other field. It's something that I've trained right from word go. It's the only place I've ever wanted to work. So I kind of ended up in Canada by accident. I didn't plan to move to Canada. I ended up here by accident. And while I was here, I was looking for work to kind of get back into what I'm trained to do, which is work with folk who struggle with mental health and addictions. And this job came up, and I came and interviewed, and it was just such a challenge, and I really wanted to be a part of that.
So I imagine over the last 20, 30 years, so you started in the 80s, so up till now there must have been some changes in the program along the way. What have you seen since you've been a part of it?
For sure. So I was brought in 2016, so about 7 years ago. Over 7 years ago now. And my job was really to take a look at the program as it was and bring it up to what we would say best practices today. So when the program was first developed in the mid-1980s, I have to tell you, it was cutting edge. It was developed by the unions. It was leading the pack in terms of what's being provided. And at that time, it was so leading edge that we had people from Australia, the UK, the US, people all across Canada came to visit, to have a look at what the unions here were doing. And at that time, it was really a referral service. So they set up this organisation, and if someone struggled with substance use, they would reach out to CIRP. CIRP would then refer them to whatever provincial services were available. Well, you kind of, from that, it moved on to the 90s into residential treatment. And so what that means is that we bought our own facility and built a recovery house, which had its own beds, 16 beds, I believe we had. And we treated people on site. So we weren't waiting for provincial services. And one of the reasons we did that, my understanding is that even back then, there were not enough resources available for members. So when you look at provincial services, I don't know that there's been as much increase in services as we've needed back then or now. So we ended up building our own facility. You then fast track forward to when I joined, and by that time, unfortunately, the program had become, it hadn't moved with the times as much. And that was really because it was a program that was set up for industry by industry. And so with me coming on board, what I was really doing was bringing my clinical background into the program. And so with that, the program you see today is very, very, very different from the one that was there prior to. We now have a 3-pillar program that's rooted in prevention and promotion, treatment, and building resiliency. So it's kind of looking at the whole spectrum of mental health and substance use. So it's very different today. It's like I said, it's a clinical program, and we have master's level concurrent disorders specialists that work with everybody.
So there's it's kind of a different approach for different things, I'd imagine. Like it's not all just one, kind of one stop fix for any one thing, right? There's obviously there's the mental health aspect of what you guys do, but then there's also like the substance abuse side, which I'm sure has a different. You guys take a different approach to that. I imagine back in the 80s, 90s, even 10 years ago, the opioid crisis wasn't what it is today, right? That's probably changed some of your guys' focus, I'd imagine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Back in the day when it was first formed, the only thing we really had in terms of a model in treating any kind of substance use was the AA model. And the AA model is, people often mistakenly think that we don't believe in AA because we've changed to a biopsychosocial model, but that's actually not true. Our mantra is always any door or any road to recovery is the right road. Doesn't matter which road that the individual takes, as long as it's a road to recovery, it's the right road. And people, you might have heard me say just there that we are what's called a biopsychosocial program today, and a harm reduction based program. What that means is that we recognize that there is a biological basis, a psychological basis, and a sociological basis to substance use, certainly mental health. And when you look at AA in terms of a model, it's not that it's separate to biopsychosocial programming. It's one aspect of the biopsychosocial spectrum. It's the social aspect. As a model, that's where it fits. So what we do is we not only do we do the social aspect, we do the bio and the psycho aspect of treatment and recovery as well.
Yeah, I with the science, getting new information daily. There's I couldn't even speak to how many studies there are out on mental health and substance abuse and all of these different topics that we're constantly learning, right? And it's clearly not a one step works for everyone, right? Like that's the AA model is, I guess, been kind of tried and proven over time to kind of work on a general scale, but it's not it's definitely not a one-stop, shop fix for everything, right?
I think you're absolutely right. As I said, whatever road to recovery works for you is the right one for you, right? So whether that's AA doesn't work for everybody, but then biopsychosocial doesn't work for everybody, right? So there's a lot of research that does show that the biopsychosocial has greater efficacy in terms of looking at substance use, but that's predominantly because we're taking into account the whole spectrum versus one aspect of substance use and the journey that people are on. You're absolutely right. There's no one size fits all, and nor should it be. Everybody's experiences are different. Everybody's histories are different. The current situation, everyone is unique in how that works for them. And so what we do is something called client-centered care. And that's really putting the client at the center of what we do. And one of the things we always say to people is that, listen, we may have the training, the expertise, we may, have garnered all of this knowledge around substance use. What we still don't have is your experience. I don't know the road that you've traveled. I've not walked in your shoes. So the way that we work is to say, you are the expert of you. We are absolutely not the experts of you. We do have expertise and we have lots of training. Our job is to work with you collaboratively and to kind of say, you bring the expertise that you have, which is your journey, your experience, and we'll bring ours and we'll place that alongside yours. And together in this collaborative process, we will try and work through and help with whatever's going on for you.
Have you guys, I don't know if you guys keep metrics or whatever, but are you guys seeing success with the program? Are you seeing people come through the program that maybe don't, come back to the program, or is the program set up where, people that have kind of gone through can kind of get back in touch if they need, another visit or more care, or whatever that looks like?
For sure. So I'm anyone that knows me knows that I'm a bit of a data hound. I'm a bit of a geek. I like my numbers and I like my stats, and one of the main reasons, I may joke about it, but one of the main reasons that we do have a ton of stats and ton of data, it's because it's an objective way of making sure that we are doing what we are supposed to be doing, right? And that is helping people. And we're not just relying on us patting ourselves on the back and saying, hey, we did an awesome job here. We actually rely on data and numbers. So we, every single person that comes through our program, they will have what we call health outcome measures. So we're measuring for core symptoms that are going on for that person, and we'll track that over time. And we find, before I talk about that, what I should say is when we're tracking those symptoms, we have a clinical team, and then we also have a clinical supervisor. And so that clinical supervisor, their job is to help the client by proxy through the counsellor. So whoever's working with you, so if you've got counsellor A working with a client, our clinical supervisor will be also helping that client by looking at the counsellor's work. And we're doing that by tracking health outcomes. So if we're looking at your symptoms and seeing that actually those symptoms don't seem to be improving, they've been with us for 3 months and there's been no change in symptoms, the clinical supervisor is going to go in and say, hey, let's have a look at this treatment plan again. We need to look at this because we're not seeing a change in symptoms. So we track things very closely. And what we generally find is roughly everyone has a 1-year treatment plan. And so we track everybody for a year. Not everybody stays for a year, but that's what we do. And so we find that when people first come in, generally, roughly about 80% of people that come and see us initially, at baseline, they will have moderate to severe symptoms of mental health and substance use, roughly about 80%. By the time they leave, we find that less than 15% of people will have moderate to severe symptoms at the 12-month mark. So what that's saying is we are seeing some really good improvements. And I absolutely stand by the fact that, we do make sure that we're hiring the right people. So everybody that comes through, we have our clinical team have bachelors in psychology, masters in psychology, plus a concurrent disorder specialism. So we're kind of setting everybody up in the right way. And then on top of that, clinical supervisor that's also tracking health outcomes, and we're measuring to make sure that objectively their symptoms are improving.
One of the new programs coming in, there's a pain relief program. That's I think a drug-free program. Tell me about that and kind of how that came to be.
Yeah, so this is something that's it's our newest passion project, and it's something that we're really hoping that just becomes a staple. So it's a pilot program. Now, I have to say, I joined in 2016, and since 2016, the industry, when I'm going out and about and I'm talking to folk, I've heard countless times, so many times, people had said to me, Vicky, we need something that isn't opioids. We need something that's an alternative to pain relief. And for years, I was doing my research, trying to understand, because when we look at the medical model, the only thing you have for pain is really opioids to deal with pain. And we know that as an industry, we do have higher rates of pain-related issues than other industries. Not because we are, unsafe in any way or for any other reason, but really because we are an industry where we use our bodies, right? It's a very physically demanding industry. So it's expected that we would have higher rates of pain within this industry. And so it really came from the industry. The industry had talked to me and say, we need something else. We can't just keep having people prescribed opioids. It's not helping. So for years, I was just kind of researching, and I came across this new, it was actually in 2019, I came across this brand new intervention called myoactivation. People often confuse it for acupuncture type needling. It uses needles and uses similar needles, but it's not acupuncture, and it's not the needling that you get at physiotherapy either. It's a different process. And anyway, so I did some research. We spent a year developing a program around it, and then we launched in January, end of January, early February 2020. Well, you know what happened in 2020. So we spent a year developing it, launched it, and then it just had to pack up because of COVID. And since then, we've been desperate to get it going again. So we have that now. So we finally got some funding from the ministry, and we're running it for a year. It's open to all construction workers, not just union and unionised members. It's all construction workers. What we're finding, and we're still early days, but I can't wait to kind of get some stats back out to industry. But what we're finding is that between 1 and 4 sessions of needling, myofascial activation, we are seeing drastic drop in pain levels for people, drastic. Anecdotally, I could tell you, I spoke to one gentleman, and he said that he'd had pain for 25 years, didn't hold much hope of coming here. And, he said, I'll try it, but I'm not holding my breath. He tried it, and he said that his pain had come down to the lowest it's ever been in that 25 years. And he had 4 sessions, and he just absolutely thrilled with the results. So we're very excited about it, very excited about it. It's open to anyone at all.
It's exciting to see, obviously moving forward, when you see the opioid crisis in BC, and you hear stories. It's not, there's, I'm sure you've heard every story you could probably imagine, but like you think of when you stereotypically people think, oh, drug use, that's a person that started doing drugs for whatever reason, maybe they were partying or wherever these kind of things start, but they don't often think that this is just a blue-collar worker who maybe had an accident on the job site or strained their back and then was prescribed opioids, and then, fast forward, an amount of time, now they have an addiction to those drugs. They've become dependent on those drugs, and then now you have another problem, right? So you still have the pain problem because that maybe hasn't gone away or hasn't kind of been remedied, but now you have a substance abuse problem as well, right? And so this kind of takes one part of that equation out, right? So now you can just focus on the pain management and that remedy.
And you're 100% right. And so we have so there's a whole number of factors that have led to where we are today within the industry, I believe. So we have, like I said, higher injury rates. And usually when you look at the research, the types of injuries we're getting when we're talking about pain is usually soft tissue damage, and it's usually lower back. That's the greatest amount of injuries that we're getting, or the greatest type of injuries we're getting. And so when you look at soft tissue damage, and you look at the regular treatment that exists currently, you have 2 options. You can either mask that pain with opioids, which doesn't fix it, just masks it, or you can go into physiotherapy, which is months and months and months of rehab, right? So, and then you kind of go, well, you can see why someone says, well, I need to get back to work. Plus, there's pressures to get back to work as well, right? Because there's shortage of workers. It's a very high stress industry, and so you've got this urgent need to get back to work, but the injury actually requires months of rehab, right? Soft tissue damage. We know that can take 6-7 months of repair and rest for that to heal. So you can understand why people were turning to opioids, because you can get back to work the next day. You injure your back, you take a tablet, it's covered the pain, it's masked the pain, it's not fixed anything, you get back to work. But the problem is, exactly as you said, once that prescription ends and now you don't have those opioids, well, that underlying injury is still there. So this is where I think our pilot with this new pain service is really unique, in that it usually works out, the data is showing between 1 and 4 sessions, that's it, and then you're done. And it's not, you're not coming in for again and again and again and again. It's just 1 to 4 sessions. In addition to that, one of the other things that we're doing is we're also doing online restorative yoga, which is different to I always say it's different to the Lululemon yoga. It's not that yoga. It's yoga that's very much designed to strengthen the body at the place of injury, so that your muscles are strengthened around where that injury is. So we offer that as well. We also offer that online. So if you're not nearby, but you want to do some of that work, you can do that too. And then we also do the self-management of pain workshops as well. So many people don't realize this, but the way that you and I experience pain is quite subjective. For someone who is someone who has a chronic experience of pain will experience pain at a higher level than someone who experiences pain acutely. So I'll give you an example of that. So say you had stubbed your toe, but other than that, you don't have any pain issues. I've struggled with back pain for many years, lower back pain, and I stubbed my toe. What we're going to find is that your experience and how you would rate that pain of stubbing your toe would actually be lower than me, because I've lived with chronic pain, and so my experience of pain is higher. And so psychologically, we can start to look at how we manage that pain as well. And so we've developed some self-management of pain classes as well, and people can take those to help manage some of that pain as well.
Yeah, always when you're, if you're at the doctor or the hospital or dentist or wherever, and they're like, give me your pain on a 1 to 10, 10 being the worst pain. I'm always like, well, I don't know. I think like if you lost a limb, that would hurt quite a bit. Like that would probably be a 10, right? So, like everyone's pain scale, like you just mentioned, is it's subjective, right? And it's different. My kid hurts himself. He's like, oh, it's like an 8, Dad, right? I'm like, okay, well, right. But so I know you're on a time crunch here, and we could talk for hours on this subject. It's interesting on so many levels, and it is extremely informative. But before we kind of leave, how do people get in touch with CIRP? How do the people get access to the services that you have available?
So one of the things that was really important to me when I first came on board was to take away absolutely as many barriers as we possibly could. And so it is really easy. You just call the number and we will take it from there. That's all you got to do, is remember the CIRP number, and that's it. And that's 604-521-8611, and that's it. That's it. Just give us a call. We have a website. You can contact us through that if you wanted. You can even text into that number, and we'll pick up that text message, or you just call us. We really have taken away as many barriers as we can to make it easy to access.
The phone service, someone answers that phone 24/7 kind of thing?
Unfortunately not. We have limited resources. We manage that phone Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. However, we do try and get back to you super fast. So we try wherever possible to return calls within 24 hours if we can.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Vicky. I'm like myself, I have so many questions, and I'm sure we'll reschedule maybe to do an in-person and kind of pick up where we left off, because I think everyone like myself probably has a bunch of questions, and I'll have them all queued up for you next time we meet. If you don't have anything final to add, please do, and if not, it was a pleasure.
So the last thing I would like to say is, I've talked about the clinic, but we have an app as well, which is putting resources directly into the hands of construction workers. It's called Build Strong, and you can get that. It's all one word, Build Strong, and you can get that wherever you get your apps. Definitely check that app out. It's got lots and lots and lots of resources on there.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Vicky. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks very much. Thank you.